Welcome to the Ruben show. We're going to kick off with Ruben today. I hope he's in the audience.
He probably isn't. He probably isn't watching.
He's probably late.
Super fan. I think our other fan should feel quite ashamed that they have not risen up to the level of his Rubenness. Anyway, we're gonna connect this. We've got some fun stuff from Ruben to show off. Doug, were you gonna show yours off?
Today I have a space shirt on. This is a classic. Yes.
Nice.
Yes.
All right. I think we're gonna send Robert back behind the scenes. Robert will be joining us again in when we get to the portion of the show about the New York Affordable Broadband Act. We're going to be talking about that. We've got to talk a little bit about BEAD and some of the organizations fronted by the big cable and telephone companies, we assume, that are saying BEAD should focus on satellite. And then they use numbers to suggest that actually BEAD should build zero fiber. So we'll talk about that quite a bit. But before that, we got some shorter topics. We're going to be talking about the new Federal Communications Commissioner, Karen Trusty. We're going to talk about the Cox and Rhode Island lawsuit quickly. North Dakota arguably has 100% fiber. And maybe a little bit about predictions for cable next year. I'm gonna try to make it sound like Doug got something wrong in a post about net neutrality, and talk a little bit about security and quantum stuff. So big agenda. And to do it all, we've got our normal crew. I'm Chris Mitchell with the Institute for Local Self-Reliance. We got Travis Carter from USI Fiber. Welcome.
Good day, Mr. Mitchell. I want to commend you on your hairdo today. Very well done. You look very polished, ready to go.
Yeah. So, after 2 weeks ago, I decided that maybe I shouldn't just wake up and just run into the world however my hair chose to be. And so I'm making an effort now.
So we have product in there now today? Is that what we're
There's
doing?
some product. Yeah. And I want people to know I'm still married. This is something people my age typically do after they've gotten divorced. But I'm trying to do it to still remain appealing somehow to my wife.
Nice. Very well done, sir. Well done.
We've got Doug Dawson from CCG, Mr. Consultant himself. Welcome.
I just have to say that sounded like the beginning of a midlife crisis. We'll have to keep an eye on that.
I mean, I do have a new EV truck that I'm leasing, so I didn't go Porsche. Yeah. I'm doing something.
And a garage. You have a new garage too.
Yeah, new siding, new roof. Hailstorms can be a real changing moment. So Kim McKinley Kim from TAC Broadband. I was going to say TAC Construction. But that's what you do, not what you're called. Nice mug.
Nice mug, Ruben. And I only wear orange these days because orange construction, like orange is the new black, is my new logo for myself. So welcome. I'm excited to be here. Let's do this, Chris.
All right. And then we got Sascha Meinrath stepping into the rotating guest spot. He's been here before. Palmer Chair in Telecommunications at Penn State, founder of the X Lab, and guy who will literally say what he thinks in DC. So he's is a kind of a rare commodity. Welcome.
Thank you. Yeah, and I feel bad because I missed the memo on the swag front, so I'm just wearing, plain old black. Maybe you and I can get together and do like some sort of very bright hunting outfit or something.
Mm-hmm. Now, is that an Irish sweater? Because if it is, you'll still be fine.
I thought you said Irish setter, but we're going to move on to the peekaboo in the spirit of trying to not skip a lot of topics as we run out of time toward the end of the show. Rye, what do you got for us? That's interesting. So for people who are listening later, first of all, you're missing out. But it's a utility pole with what looks like a water line going up it. I think it might be a fire suppression system. Rumor has it the electric company needed water, so they ran it overhead. Nice. Not seen that before myself.
I've not seen that, but it probably is a high fire area, and it probably puts sprinklers out. Yeah, for around the pole. So that's the only thing. I can't imagine any other use for it. Yeah.
I mean, if anyone else is paying attention to the news, if that's a high fire area, then they are doing a real poor job of clearing the area around the pole.
Yeah, they're lucky they didn't set it on fire putting the water hose in. So yeah.
All right. We are going to. I was gonna check this really quick. Comments. Okay, we're gonna jump on to the first topic. What is the latest? Does anyone have anything they want to share about the latest news of the new administration, new priorities? I had an email from someone that I trust on this stuff, and I'd asked a question, and in responding, she was like kind of annoyed with some of the people who are just like going crazy with hypotheticals and this and that. And I decided to take her advice, and we're not going to do a bunch of hypotheticals. We're going to try and focus on people who are being appointed and what we're seeing, as opposed to parade of horribles. Sascha, let me go to you first. Any comments on anyone that we know is coming in?
I mean, so we know about Trustee being nominated for the FCC. She's
Karen Trustee.
Indeed. And young.
I thought it was Olivia Trustee. Is it some?
I think it's Karen, but I did not know of her before. I'm not that connected.
Yeah, so she's been a Hill staffer for a while, and I suspect, and we're seeing this a lot with the FCC in particular, dating back many administrations, where they're basically tapping people. Rosenworcel came from the Hill. Like, it's not actually the president nominating; it's like congressional members nominating to the president, who then puts forward those names, and she's part of that long litany of soon to be, I guess, former Hill staffers that then take over the FCC.
Right. People who did a tour at major monopoly, in this case, Verizon. She also had some background. Where did I have it? I thought I had a note here with another one of the larger companies, but more recently in Verizon. I think Sascha and I especially usually are pretty frustrated with the revolving door. Although I think, when we look at some of the other appointments, this is just fine. I mean, I don't fully know that I'm ready to get all the numbers.
She'll be more knowledgeable than many, which
I think it's.
I'll take knowledge. That's good.
But the articles don't say anything. Like, there's no criticisms, there's no praises. It's just very matter of fact on all the articles. So that's what's really interesting, is that it's just kind of flying under the radar really well for this nomination. Yeah, I mean,
when Trump was finishing up his last term, we were concerned about the nomination of Symington because we felt like he didn't have this kind of experience. And I don't know that Starks had as much experience as, for instance, Rosenworcel when they came on previously. But I mean, this is sort of like the things we used to complain about. And I prefer that to people who are less qualified to complain about. So pretty reasonable, I think, for an administration like this.
It seems like the kind of person you would put in if you're a Republican. So yeah, nothing shocking about it. So
yeah. Anyone else that we want to talk about coming in?
Well, her name is Olivia, though, correct? Not Karen.
Did I get that wrong?
I want to make sure we get the name right.
The Fierce article says Olivia.
Okay, yeah. I don't know how I copied that wrong. Okay.
Yeah. I just want to make sure we,
Olivia Trustee. Wow. Yeah. Wow.
And I think I have to leave the show now because I agreed with Chris.
We all knew that after
I was right. What's wrong with the world right
after
now?
100 shows, I made a mistake. It finally happened. We have a graphic for it.
Only one.
Yeah,
no, I'm sorry.
It's going to be the highlight of our 200 show. Yeah, so.
I mean, I wish I called her Susan or something, because calling someone Karen is not just. But I don't know what happened there. I just screwed that up. Anyone else you want to talk about? Perhaps getting your name correct this time.
Yes, Ruben joined.
Welcome, Ruben.
Welcome, Ruben.
Now you said not to speculate, but there is active rumors that Ariel Roth is going to take over NTIA. And if that is the case, I think that she would be worth looking into as well.
Yeah, and for people who aren't familiar, she's been active with Senator Cruz. Senator Cruz has a number of strong opinions about telecom and spectrum auctions and things like that. So if she is indeed put up and takes over NTIA, then we'll have some sense that it'll be going more in the direction of where Cruz has been.
Yeah, and it gets awkward very quickly because, of course, BEAD, the largest public investment in broadband infrastructure, is under NTIA. Cruz has been pretty antagonistic to that program, and now his consigliere may be taking over the agency in charge of that program. So I think there's something worth sussing out there.
So sure. I would suspect, but by the next show, we'll see that, right? This isn't going to be the Biden administration where we wait a year or two to put people into positions, assuming that the Democrats will be in the presidency for the end of time.
Yeah, I was looking to see. So Gigi Sohn was nominated finally in October.
Oh, I was going to say September. Okay, yeah, October.
Of Biden's first year, which is to say Trump managed to move this at like -2 weeks. What took till October?
Kudos to the Trump administration. They came in really prepared this second time, coming 100%. In ready to go.
All right. We have the Cox and Rhode Island lawsuit is going away. This is where Cox had said that Rhode Island was acting improperly in terms of locations that would be eligible and not taking input from Cox. Rhode Island said that Cox didn't take advantage of the opportunities they had to provide the data. They were going back and forth. The reason we thought this was a story is Doug convinced us all that this was the first of many lawsuits. Doug, are you ready for a public act of contrition?
Oh, we are nowhere near the end of lawsuits. We just have to wait a little while. Wait till states start cutting back the rules. So, yeah, we'll see what happens. This one is very interesting because the state was right. Cox didn't participate in the map challenge, which is exactly the forum where you get this fixed. They just sued them. It was a very odd thing to do. It got everyone's attention, but they could have just gotten it fixed. There was an actual open public channel to get their issues heard. Because if broadband's already there, it's very easy to prove, and they would have won. So I think that they probably both sat down, looked at the facts, and went, "Okay, Cox, you're right. Why didn't you do the map challenge?" So it was kind of a silly suit. It was a silly suit. So.
I mean, I think Cox and the state came together and met somewhere in the middle. I don't know that the challenge process would have worked the same way. I mean, Cox is, for people to have a sense, there's a cable company in Rhode Island called Cox. I think there's one other one, a family-owned one called a couple of years ago. Cox is a big deal in Rhode Island. Sascha, you look like you're ready to jump in.
No, I mean, being from Connecticut originally, I can tell you, like, they've carved up the pie, kind of, Godfather Cuba pie style. Where like Cox has basically taken this region, and so, if they serve you, great. If they don't, that's it. They're the whole ball game. And so them not participating is really kind of like ISPs in the state just deciding, no, we're not going to take part in the challenge process. And frankly, so I think Doug is right. We're going to see a lot of lawsuits. I would look to Pennsylvania as kind of one of the epicenters for that. And I also think, Cox is right in that this whole process has been just shenanigans and kerfuffles and has yielded a map that is maybe, if I want to give them the benefit of the doubt, marginally better than the two that preceded this entire monstrosity of a process. This is how you build processes to not engage in crowdsourced, expertise.
Okay, but question, did they settle the suit and nothing happened and everybody walked away, or did they settle and there's some kind of agreement behind the scenes?
No, I think
we have to assume that they changed the map. We have to.
Yeah, so I think I think what I would expect to happen, if Cox had participated in the public challenge, I think they would have had some, but not all of the things that they wanted changed. I suspect they may have gotten a little bit more in their negotiation with the state than they would have in the challenge process. And so they came away happy. The state's happy that they can move on. I think that they've each got something, and it hasn't held the process up too much. So, it probably worked to Cox's advantage marginally, I would guess.
And I expect Cox to sue in other states when they don't get what they want. So, I mean, they're big in Louisiana, they're big in Arizona, they're big in Virginia. So they have a lot of places they come.
Yeah, do you think that we're going to see lawsuits from big guys and small guys and all across the gamut, or how do you see that playing out?
I think that large ISPs who don't get what they want out of BEAD will turn around and sue that the process was unfair. Is my best
I can't
guess.
imagine small guys. Small guys largely don't want to be involved.
Suits are expensive. Yeah, so.
Exactly. Like they're not going to have the kind of law. They're not going to want to put that kind of money into lawyers to be able to take on this. So I assume it'll be bigger ones that have,
But the kind of suits I've always expected is these grant offices have to score these grant applications, and there's a lot of room for interpretation and error there. And this is the first grant program where all of that stuff is supposed to be made public. So you're going to get to see what they did, which often you don't. And so then they're going to come in and go, you scored me incorrectly. Here's the lawsuit. I should have won that grant. I fully expect that to happen.
Yeah. And
I could be wrong, but there's too much money at stake.
But also,
and the chances are they could be right. So, yeah.
But the scoring is going to be done by humans that are fallible. I mean, like, there's not a ton of people that have a lot of expertise. Like, it's not like they're going to clone Doug Dawson and have you like being on a group.
They could have given it to this panel, and we would have never made a mistake except you every 100 shows. So yeah.
Yeah, as long as they kept me to like 95 scoring, then I would have hit it.
But
That's
yes,
how statistics work. Right.
Well, and
as we in statistics, Sascha.
Yeah, we're going to get a confidence interval, have some high inter-rater reliability. I mean, we could totally instrument the crap out of this, but most states aren't going to do that. And this has been consistently the problem. Number one, you've got like 56 different methodologies for scoring and et cetera. Two, each state is deciding like how to even go about the process of scoring these things. And that's going to be...
I think there's pressure. I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I think there's pressure not to sue. I think that's why we haven't seen as many lawsuits, and I think there's going to be fewer than you all think.
But what you sue over, nobody's lost anything yet, because again, the money allocated in 2021 here in 2025 still hasn't left the building. So like, it's only once people start realizing like, oh, I'm either being cut out of these funds or, that this is final and it's not going to change and we're screwed. Only then.
I think one of the considerations that is quietly happening behind the scenes is the states are making sure that everyone gets enough that they won't have an interest to sue. I mean, that's one of the things that I think is going into how they carve up this turkey in each state.
But the only way to do that is they have to manipulate the scoring, and it's going to be that's I mean,
we'll see. Yeah,
that alone is a massive. That's what they've always did. The Minnesota state grants were very careful to give it to every single quadrant of the state.
Well, that was a requirement in the law. Yeah,
but you can't do that in these fair scoring things. I mean, the scores are the scores. Yeah.
Yeah. Go ahead, Kim.
I was just going to say, let's go back to who in the heck in their right mind wants to be a state broadband director having to deal with any of this?
Nobody.
Well, I think we've got 56 folks that have stepped up. There's already a few people who have stepped up and stepped back. And so I do think it's worth noting that, like, I don't know. I've been digging into history some. I'm not covering the Woodrow Wilson administration because I already know everything that happened every day of that administration, so I can throw it in Travis's face. But other times, I've been looking at other times in history, and this is how things get built. This is not an anomaly, right? Like there are processes that don't work. There's corruption. There's like. And you can sit here and say it wasn't perfect and it went wrong, but, and we will continue to try to learn from it. It's an important process, but I think we are all thankful also that some people have stepped up in these broadband offices. They're doing the best they can. And, we'll hopefully learn some lessons and do it better the next time we go around. Not a rant, but I've left you all speechless.
I would like
you left us speechless because you were so optimistic. I don't know who you are.
I was really stung by being was stung by being accused of being bitter. Go ahead, Travis.
I just want to divulge a secret. Chris calls him Woodrow Wilson on this show, but behind the scenes he calls him Woody. So just so you know, that's what he texts me. Yeah. So
I can present a counterpoint to Chris's optimism.
I love this. I love this. Go, Sascha.
So in the 1990s, there's the Technology Opportunities Program, where we invested in digital literacy, created community technology centers, et cetera, et cetera. That program, which created all these community technology centers, and the creation of the Community Technology Center Network is actually where Angela Seifer and I first met. We were both on the board of this entity, which is kind of like we had like captain's chairs on the Titanic, which is to say, while we're on the board, the federal government pulled all the funding from this, ceased to invest in this. Almost every community technology center collapsed across the entire country. And we wrote, not just us, like the nation did the sort of like, oh gosh, we should never do something like this again. Fast forward to 2009, we set up the BTOP program and basically do exactly the same mistakes that we did during the TOP program. Fast forward 15 years to today, and lo and behold, we're redoing the same mistakes of the prior two programs. And into that, and I say this with love, Chris, but into that, Chris has optimism. And I'm like, but do we learn? Because historically, we seem to recreate a lot of the same mistakes. And one of the big ones to me is the lack of meaningful personal accountability for the individuals that keep making the decisions. Like, bad decisions don't just happen. People make those decisions. And certainly we have a lot of those in the current program already. And again, the money hasn't gone out the door. I think it's going to get way messier as the contention ratio on this, which is probably going to be 500 to 1,000%. 500% more money is needed than exists in the program. Once that happens and the scoring comes in and you have the 80% of the people minimally who don't get money, I mean, grab your popcorn and your tequila, because like it's going to be an interesting period.
Kim had a question.
You bring up a good point, and I think that Travis really just needs to ask this question, but I'll do it for Travis today. Is how many people have gotten connected by BEAD money thus far?
Actually, it's not true. So the main BEAD program, 0, but there are like the tribal broadband build out fund funding is going out.
Sascha, yeah, I was on your side when you were going to blow this up, and now you went to Chris's side.
No, I'm just
also like I have a lot of criticism for several of the people that are running NTIA in terms of why it's taken so long. But the number one reason it has taken so long is because Congress would rather delay the program for years and deny the connection to tens of thousands of households than fund one location that already has a choice. The Federal Communications Commission has refused to create an accurate accounting of where broadband is, and so the NTIA has had to spin its wheels for freaking years, waiting for a map to figure out where we could even put the money. And so one of the things that I just have to point out that drives me nuts is that, like, we can talk about what the Biden administration got wrong, but most of the reason that we are here is because the Federal Communication Commission, under Democrats and Republicans, has refused to do the most basic task of figuring out who has internet access at a decent level and who doesn't. And we still don't know that after tens of millions of dollars, and we're not on a path to know it anytime soon.
Yeah. Now, there is a carve out.
That was almost a rant.
There is also a carve out in IIJA, which is the legislative vehicle that created the program that empowers the assistant secretary. You know, was Alan Davidson. Now it's probably going to be this Ariel Roth, to unilaterally make designations of where you can put funding, which is to say, yes, you are 100% correct. The process as it was laid out has been delayed at every step of the way. And there was this pressure release valve. A visionary leader in charge of NTA could have just said, you know what, this is taking too long, so I'm designating we're putting funding here.
That's how stuff has to get done, and it didn't happen. But we're gonna move on. I'm gonna cut you off, Sascha. Any last comments, Doug?
No, that was good.
We're going to retouch on some of this in the discussion about technology neutrality and BEAD, which is coming back up again. But before then, very quickly, North Dakota, we had a story up that'll be in the chat here in a second. My colleague Sean had written it. North Dakota, we're a little bit making fun. They're not at 100% fiber, but they are soon to be at 100%, 100 by 20. North Dakota has like 17 local telephone cooperatives. I think 15 of them are cooperatives, 2 of them are private companies that have done a tremendous job. They bought these exchanges from US West back when Doug had a few black hairs or darker colored hairs in his beard. And they've done a tremendous job. The Midco has done a good job of investing in some of the cities. So nearly everyone will have a high quality connection very soon there. So we talked about that a little bit. I don't know if anyone has any comments on that.
I just want to say I helped a bunch of them buy those US West properties. So that was, yes.
It was huge.
It was huge because US West, which then became Quest, recognized that they had no interest in staying there, and they just basically gave them away. They sold them for very cheap, and it's happened a bunch since then. Like the sell to Brightspeed from the same giant company, but they walked away at the right time when there was enough time for folks to do something with those properties. So yeah, it's too bad they didn't do that nationwide way back then.
So what we found out is that Doug is responsible for North Dakota almost having 100% broadband. To make it clear.
I mean,
no, I just helped them find the money. I didn't have the idea. They did.
Doug, at one point I saw a number. You've had more than 1,000 clients between the telephone companies, the CLECs, the broadband companies, and stuff like that. It's a remarkable percentage of the industry.
Yeah, it's a lot of folks. Yes.
Any last comments?
I was just going to say, in the article that you sent me that I read, you're welcome, Chris, that I think one of the most fascinating points is that when they're talking about all the farms in North Dakota, 8 out of 10 of them are already connected. And I think that's a huge statement of why this connectivity is needed in some of those farmlands. It is very important.
And she's never been to North Dakota, by the way. But
I don't even know. I haven't even seen it.
If you go there, these farms are really far apart. I mean, this is the most sparsely populated place.
I mean, in the
Wyoming is probably the only one that's less populated. It's just spread out. So
in the Northwest, I think I was looking at one point, a lot of the areas it averages a household per square mile. And that means that there's actually a lot of areas where there's way less than that because there's areas of density that balance that out. Also note that Matt Larson, friend of the show, always likes to remind us they have a state infrastructure bank as well that has really helped. There's a lot of really good policy in North Dakota.
Yeah.
But most
of these farms can't see their neighbor with binoculars. I mean, they're really far apart. So.
Travis?
And that's creepy that you even said that, Doug, by the way. Did you go out there with those binoculars?
I can see 7 out of 10 of my neighbors with binoculars.
I go everywhere with binoculars. I'm a bird watcher.
So I want to apologize to Sean because I did not read the article, but does he go into why they were successful and who the leaders were that actually got this work done?
We've done this in past reports that he references there. One of the people that I've been really wanting to bring on is a guy named Carlson from, he had been at Optical Solutions before Calix bought him. And when I talk to folks that have made these investments, having a vendor that they could trust, I've done a lot of work with Calix. They're a partner in the Tribal Broadband Bootcamp work. And when I talk with the folks out there, they felt that like they made a step into this technology in the early 2000s and mid 2000s when very few others were buying it in bulk. And one of the reasons they did that was they felt that they had someone that would always be there to help them fix problems. So I think that there's a lot to be said for, the way the industry, some of the folks in the industry helped to make sure that happened.
Now, before we move on, a quick answer to Travis's question is this was mostly built with USF money and subsidies. So, I mean, these little co-ops got a lot of subsidies to help pay for it. So, but
there's people who would say it was inefficient. There's people who would say that we spent too much on it. I think it's a fairly good program. Like as good as it gets, more or less.
Yes,
it's meeting people's needs.
But are they the only state that got that, or did they just utilize the funds?
No, it's because like CenturyLink had access to similar pots of money, but they didn't want to invest in rural areas.
Yeah, all
at
the
that
other
time.
states, like in Minnesota, the rural areas are still controlled by Frontier and all those folks who didn't do this. So,
If
well,
we
that's the
haven't done this
difference.
analysis, but I think if you
Yep.
ran the analysis, I thought someone might have, of the BEAD locations, I think you would find that 3 out of 4 of them, perhaps more than 3 out of 4 of those BEAD locations, are served by AT&T, Verizon, CenturyLink, Frontier, Windstream, the top 7 TDS. Those companies are overwhelmingly the ones who refuse to invest. Small companies, the ones that make up NTCA, they are in the 80s, 90% of people passed with fiber in many cases. It's rural areas that were stuck with the big companies that were left behind.
I would be surprised if it's not 95 to 98%. It's all those big companies. Yeah.
Yeah.
So final question related to this, Doug. Do you think the are the ordinances a lot easier to deal with in North Dakota? That's kind of my gut feel.
Well, no,
Ordinances.
again, nobody lives there. You just bury along the side. These are buried
Exactly.
networks
So
mostly.
there's
and you bury with a plow. You can drive it for 2.5 hours between houses.
That I was wondering if it's just much easier to build there than anywhere else.
Yeah, but I mean, you're still talking about, like a tech that's serving 1 or 2 homes per day, right? So okay. All right.
And I'm going to say this one last thing. How many people are in North Dakota when we're making this argument?
650, 700,000, I'm guessing.
Okay. So we can celebrate it, and I'm happy for North Dakota, but it's not the solution for everywhere, especially
Travis will soon have more customers than that. So
but geographically it's a large piece. I mean, the one that always surprises me is why isn't Rhode Island 100% covered? I mean,
they're pretty high, but yes, Cox.
Yeah. I mean, isn't that the size of our neighborhood or something? I mean, you'd think that'd be done.
Okay, we're losing time. Doug, we're not going to spend too much time on this. Doug had a really good post about regulating by the extremes, and in it, there's a lot of things to take away. But there's one thing I wanted to bring out. I want to see how Sascha reacted to this too. He says, I've been watching the back and forth for more than a decade, and I can't see how this regulatory back and forth, where every administration, they change the policy on net neutrality. Doug says he can't see how it helps the big ISPs. I think I can see how, but I'm curious how other people react.
Yes, it does help the ISPs so long as precedent doesn't get set first. So I would agree with Doug that were there meaningful consumer protections and et cetera, that the back and forth would actually be harmful. As long as you can maintain this Schrodinger's regulatory environment where there's no rules of the road really, then the stasis very much benefits the incumbents, benefits the powers that be. And that's basically what we've seen since the 96 Act, which is to say there's very few rules of the road. Now, weirdly, the back and forth is very likely to greatly lessen now that Chevron deference has been dismissed by the Supreme Court, which is to say now the regulatory agency can't swing back and forth because the power for a regulatory agency to interpret a nebulous law, which is like all of them, have been greatly diminished. And therefore, everything's going to be adjudicated. And I think as you guys and I agree, adjudication happens when somebody with deep pockets sues. So that process also is going to be heavily slanted in favor of deep-pocketed incumbents. The question that I have is, will that be worse than what we've seen? And having fought on the network neutrality front for 20 plus years now, since the very beginning, I'm not sure that the courts adjudicating and having like an evidentiary trail that judges have to abide by will yield a worse result in a less timely manner than the current environment.
Right. Now, I don't want to get too far down that path. I want to, first of all, note that I have a Schrodinger's cat shirt that's hilarious. I'll have to wear that next time. But the thing that I want to pull out, which is what I was thinking of too, Doug, is that if you think about the public interest group spent the last 15 years arguing more about how to make sure there's affordable internet access or more time arguing about net neutrality. And I think net neutrality is important. I think I'm deeply concerned about the internet going the way of radio or television in terms of becoming a vast wasteland. Please, I know that there's stuff out there that's a wasteland, but like still, we're publishing this content to the internet and everyone can get it on equal terms. It's pretty awesome. So I think it's important, but it's also been a big distraction. So I don't know if you want to respond to that at all, Doug.
I really have no opinion of how good this show is. No,
I just want to bring up.
I want to actually agree with Sascha. The one thing that is not in my opinion there is it's already all been going to court for the last 2 decades anyhow. So whenever every FCC decision of any importance spent 2 to 3 years in the courts afterwards. So nothing ever actually gets implemented. And by the time the courts decide, we're changing the rule back the other way. It's really have been no actual changes. So, but I still think that my point there was the guys in the boardrooms at the big companies don't care about this crap. I think it's driven by the lobbyists who get paid to fight this. They make a fortune off of fighting these battles. The guys in the boardroom could care less about this. This is
100%.
not important. This is not important to their businesses. So.
Kim, I want to tack something on, but I'll let you go first,
Well,
Kim.
first of all, Sascha, you used way too many big words that I don't understand. I'm from North Carolina originally. Those are too big. Second of
North
all,
Carolina's got the best universities in this country. I mean, sorry, California.
I didn't go to one.
What's up
I didn't
there?
go to one. They didn't give me. Well, like I went to South Carolina for my college education, which I love, by the way, still too. But like I agree. I don't think I think this is just not a matter that people care about as much as we make it out to be that people care about this matter anymore. I just don't think I don't hear people talking about it.
No, you're
very
right,
often
because
anymore.
the media doesn't cover it. I mean, I think, there's been no significant media coverage of these issues, but we got millions of real live human beings to make comments on the proceedings, which is unprecedented, and also tens of millions of dead people and other people making comments. So an investigation that was never really done. But I wanted to add on. Doug, made this point in it, and I just want to highlight. We've made this comment before when we saw a bill coming forward in a legislature and trying to figure out why is this happening. This company doesn't have a lot to stand. And our general realization at the end was that they were paying lobbyists to do something, and the lobbyists had to come up with something to do. And so they were like, "We don't have a big deregulatory ask for this session. We're going to ask to kill municipal broadband or something like that," because the lobbyists have to have something to justify charging hundreds of dollars per hour for their time. And so there is a tail wagging the dog aspect of this. Sascha, were you going to say anything?
Yeah, well, I was going to agree with Kim and also explain that the reason why people don't care about this is that the real world, very much pocketbook issues are not explicated. And that's where the public interest sector has really fallen down on the job, which is to say, when groups like Comcast are able to create a two-sided market, I charge you, the end user, to access Netflix, and then I charge Netflix to access you, the end user. You have to pay for that somewhere. So now we're paying for internet access, then we're paying for Netflix, then we're paying Netflix to access Comcast, who we already paid once. And the end result is Netflix costs go up. And that translates to very real overcharging. We had done a series of analyses looking at American pricing versus elsewhere. 10, 15 years ago, it was already $20 a month minimal overcharging per household per month, which translates to around like $25 billion a year, which is to say we're wasting far more money than any major public investment has ever been made in public broadband infrastructure. There's a reason why the costs are higher and the service levels suckier in the United States than like the entire rest of the highly industrialized world. And that does in fact boil down to these weird battles like over network neutrality and not, discriminating against content just because it's a streaming service.
Yeah. And I think my analysis is, we're unlikely to be in a situation where Comcast is able to charge Netflix right now in the near future, but we'll find out. I mean, I think those companies
we caught them doing exactly that, right?
With the peering points, right?
Yeah, with the congested of the peering points, where at the beginning of their negotiations, they allowed peering points, these places where different back-end providers interconnect, to become congested. They weren't congested, they made them congested. It was like it's
a mob tactic. I mean, we need to move on.
Okay,
just for
but
timing.
when the negotiations concluded, when they paid their protection racket, then
Boom.
you see in literally 3 days uncongestion at these points. And it's like that was somebody flipping a switch to say, okay, we will no longer degrade Netflix because they paid whatever we were asking in our rent-seeking by Comcast.
Yeah, and that's where the thing that what I think is worth wrapping this up with is that this is only an issue with the biggest companies.
Yes.
Travis isn't going to be doing that. Netflix would be laughing at Travis if he said, "Oh, it'd be a terrible thing if something happened to your service in South Minneapolis." And Netflix would be like, "Yeah, bring it on, buddy." So this is only a problem when you have the kind of scale that a few companies have. Okay.
I'm going to deny that because as working from an ISP, some of those have peering agreements with Netflix and weren't big companies. So it's not just big companies. It's all across the gamut on those peering exchanges.
Oh no, you have
Go
peering
ahead.
agreements, but if you were to say, I'm going to allow my peering agreement to congest so that Netflix quality is reduced, so that Utopia Fiber can lean on Netflix and say, you got to pay us more money. I don't think Netflix is going to return your call. Do you think that you would have been able to put enough pressure on Netflix that they would have started giving you a special payment?
Some of the Utopia Fiber ISPs absolutely are doing that. Yes, I know that.
All right.
So,
But I mean, I think they're getting the standard Netflix appliance. They're not getting a special under the table.
I don't
payment.
know. I don't know.
Put
Nobody's
cameras under the
telling me.
table. You'll figure it out. Okay, we're gonna jump into quantum stuff.
If you're an ISP, it's a strange way to run your business. Give your customers a suboptimal service while you're trying to collect from one of your peer. It seems kind of counterintuitive to me. I would be surprised if people are actually doing it.
Well, but if you have millions of people who have no other choice, then it's a different question than if all of your customers have another choice.
Sure. No, I mean, I get it. Yeah. I mean, I understand, but you are correct. The smaller ISPs, there's no basis for them to have a position with Netflix.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Security and quantum stuff. Sascha, did you want to raise one of those?
Yeah, I want to put a new word into everyone's lexicon. Q-Day.
Oh boy.
Not Qusay, the son of Saddam Hussein, but Q-Day.
Q-Day, which is the day that quantum computing, we're still probably, I would guess, 20, 25 years out. But once quantum computing can break a lot of the usual suspects in terms of encryption, RSA, elliptic curve cryptography, things like that, then all of the information that's been hoovered up by the NSA for the last generation.
Hoovered up. I'm just keep going.
Let's put the propeller hat on. All of the asymmetric crypto stuff, right? All the symmetrical crypto still works, but asymmetrical crypto, the SSL, TLS stuff on the websites, a lot of that then is broken, and they can go back and look at lots of records in the past. But not all crypto is gone.
And the U.S. government has known this and has been hoovering up all of these encrypted communications in anticipation that someday they will be decryptable.
Yeah, they're in Utah, Kim. Go check it out.
That's right.
And I don't think they let me in a safe facility. I don't think I can walk in there, but I will knock on the door. Go ahead, Sascha.
No, but as we just saw this last quarter with the Salt Typhoon fiasco.
Assume people don't know what that is.
Where ostensibly it's Chinese-backed hackers infiltrated the U.S. surveillance system to then hoover up our information for themselves. The reason to do that is even if something is encrypted today, you have to anticipate now Q-Day is coming, and all of that information, everything you thought is secure, may in fact, in relatively short order, not be. And that is a terrifying reality that will soon be upon us. What we do with that, and it's not just going to be the Chinese government and the US government, it's going to be like,
everybody.
As certain individuals have been writing, now you can do quantum at home, right?
Well, one of the things that's interesting about this is that the asymmetric public key crypto that we've been using, a lot of that doesn't work, but there is, I believe, photon entangling crypto that is believed that will be good, but you can only do it over fiber optics. And so it is possible that we will have some crypto that only works if you're on a fiber optic platform. I mean, presumably that will come up with others as well, but there's some interesting implications.
There are.
Kim, you muted yourself, but we would like to unmute you, please.
I will unmute myself. I don't know if you know this, but I moderated a quantum computing panel this year because I am the expert in quantum computing. I think these are my simple takeaways. Quantum computing needs fiber because it needs the light, right? So when you're talking about all these applications, these people I was talking to, Sascha, on stage said a lot of the banking and the DoD are already using quantum computing, and they think it's going to come out a lot quicker than 20, 25 years. Who knows if that's the case or not, but it is a fascinating topic of is this going to change the ecosystem in which we live in right now for connectivity.
Yeah, but do keep in mind, today's quantum computers are sort of like having a supercomputer like ENIAC, right? Like they're not very good. I mean, they do certain things very well. And there is now, for the last, 5-6 years, there's certain tasks that quantum computers can do better than traditional computers, even the fastest traditional computers. But they're very niche and they're very in their infancy or possibly toddlerdom. But if you're thinking about like a nation state and you're thinking about having access to all the world's encrypted communications, you can imagine that's kind of incentive. And so when all of these mega corporations are announcing going all in on quantum, I guarantee whether it's like in the budget we can see or in the black box budget that's probably even larger, we're investing, I would guess, tens of billions of dollars into rapid development of these technologies.
Because somebody wants to be the first one to get there. Whoever gets there first wins. But
I think this, I'm going to go down like a little pathway right now, crawling through it. But because my fear is some of our enemies out there, other countries, are they developing it faster than us to take down some of our power grid and all of those things
not to take down the power grid, I don't think, but to know exactly what the conversations are, to be able to spy on conversations and things like that. We're going to have to wrap this pretty soon, but Travis hasn't had a chance yet. Travis, you want to
go for it?
Yeah, well, let's not forget we went through this in 1999 already with DES when that was encrypted. Remember from the onset of computing, DES was considered, unbreakable until about 1999.
You do it 3 times.
Yeah. So, to Reed's point there in the chat, I mean, there are technologies available, but I'm telling you what, if you have a Gmail account, they're already looking at it anyway. So, you got to look at the actual practical applications that everyone's using. So, a simple subpoena will get pretty much all the data they need at any time.
I want to draw this to a close. We can talk more about this in the future. We bring Sascha back and others to dive in on it. I want to make sure we get to another topic before Robert sat here the whole time and not been able to get in. I will throw out there that if anyone knows which of the Q stocks or ETFs to invest in, I have a massive fortune in Lumen stock sitting out there that I need to move over. So it's not true.
Oh, no. The Nancy ETF is beating the Cruise ETF right now since Chris turned me on to those. So,
well, the good news is the interesting news is Chris will take our recommendations on which stock to buy.
Well, yeah. That's a little concerning. And first of all, like we did have a conversation at one point that Chris needs to understand how stocks work. It goes up. It needs to go up, not down. Just saying.
We are going to move over. We're going to welcome Robert in. So the Affordable Broadband Act in New York State is now in effect. We've talked about this a little bit before. There was an assumption that it would not take effect, that the courts would strike it down. What's interesting is that if a state in the 5th Circuit or the 6th Circuit was to take up this policy, I suspect those courts would strike it down. We'd see the Supreme Court reconsider it perhaps. So don't take that as a permanent sense that states could enact this. But the broad outlines of it are that ISPs that have more than 20,000 subscribers in New York State are required to offer a $15 a month package delivering 25 megabits down, 3 megabits up. That will almost certainly soon be increased in speed. And there could be a price increase potentially at some point. Or they could offer a 200 meg package for $20 a month. What's important, I think, for this conversation is if other states are thinking about this, what is the threshold for exemptions? I think none of us probably would recommend that all ISPs have to conform to this, because it's only at a certain scale where losing money on a significant number of people won't sink the entire boat. So I want to throw this out there. We'll get to AT&T in a minute, but I just wanted to, let me throw to you first, Robert. I think you wanted to share your perspective as someone that is building in New York State, although I think you're pretty far away from the threshold of 20,000 New York State subscribers, right?
Yeah, but if they change it and say 20,000 subscribers for the company, then we're over it. So that's just a simple little legislative change they need to make. Hopefully they won't, but
it's something you have to consider. Like, I just feel like there's people like me who might be like, they're not going to do that. Well, you can't just be like, oh, we're not going to do that. Like, you have to figure out how to be able to, I'll remind people, sorry to take this over one more time. One thing people don't understand about small businesses, you're not like, as the owner, like totally off scot-free, right? Like you have personal assets invested in this. And like, you could basically be, if you make a decision that runs the company totally out of money, the people that you've borrowed money from could take everything from you, basically, more or less.
Yeah, forever. Yeah, I mean, I have $100 million in debt. Good luck paying that off if you don't have a business.
Right, but it's not like some people like could be $100 million in debt and they walk away with 3 homes in a boat and all kinds of other stuff.
Sure, yeah.
I'm guessing, I know that Travis is not in that situation. I'm guessing you're not also.
Correct. I would, it would be very bad. It would be really bad for our customers too. So the most important thing is, I just ran some quick little numbers, and so there's a couple of things we look at when we're trying to figure out how to build an area, right? So we look at what the cost per passing is, and Travis, I'm sure, is, everyone's familiar with this. So if a subscriber passing a subscriber's home costs $1,000, $2,000, $3,000, we just put together a little table. And if our take rate is 33%, our take rate's typically higher than that. So, more around 50% in a mature market. But the cost, let's say it's $1,000 per passing, which is, it isn't, but if it's $1,000 per passing at a $15 MRC, to pay it back in 10 years, you need 25 at 0% interest. You need $25 a month. You need $40 a month for a 10-year payback, at 10% interest, which is basically what we're paying now. So in a more rural community where a lot of times the income levels are lower, and there's a lot of things that qualify people for this $15 broadband. It's not just, being below the poverty line, or, it's like there's a whole laundry list of things that qualify for people for this. And so with that, there's no way to even repay the money in any kind of a reasonable time frame. You can't even make interest payments at $15. Forget about repaying the principal. So if an area has 50% poverty rate, you're never going to make any money to pay for your network.
And I'll just note also, you're talking about repayment. There's still the other issue of like we've talked with Travis about that. It eats away at your ability to build additional network. And so one should be aware that ISPs could be in build mode or in kind of like harvest mode. Many of you are in build mode when you're growing like this. But there's so many things I want to say, but I want to make sure everyone has a chance. So I'll go first to Sascha and then Doug, and we'll work our way around.
Yeah, so on the one hand, I very much agree that it's very easy for regulators with their cudgels to create the circumstances whereby businesses simply cannot thrive, especially if they're not this mega incumbency and et cetera. A more thoughtful approach would really be to be looking at, some sort of percentage of your user base and subsidizing to that level or what have you, or as we've done, and, I might get hisses from Travis and Robert on this, but as we've done historically, when we have monopolies in telecom, we've put a profit cap. We've just said, hey, look, you can't earn more than this % profit in order to put a cap on pricing. And really what this comes down to is kind of the predatory pricing that's kind of rampant in the United States, and the fact that we've got a kind of one size fits all solution, regardless of what, because there's something very meaningfully different if you're charging $50 a month for a gig service and when you're charging $90 a month for 200 megabit service. And so I get what the intent of this is, and I definitely feel that pricing in the United States is wackadoodle crazy. This isn't a very effective way to meaningfully address that fundamental problem. And I'll give you a case in point.
You got to wrap it up soon, though.
Yeah, sorry.
You're too much of a professor at this point. I remember when you could be concise.
Well, I mean, we've seen this previously with our subsidies for low-cost connectivity that just happened with ACP. In the end, we didn't solve the problem worth the damn. And so now, at the end of the subsidies, we're right back where we started. And that's what happens when you don't address the fundamentals of pricing and you focus on the symptomology.
So if I was to break that down, I think the short of that is we have a market failure that we need to address rather than just focusing on pricing so narrowly, right, Sascha?
There's a massive market failure. And it's also the case that a lot of ISPs are not doing the predatory pricing. They don't have these high average return per users to balance out the low cost modeling, right? If you have a flat structure, you don't have a lot of fat that you can devote to this subsidizing these low cost connections. And I suspect a lot of independents, having not ripped off many of their customers, are facing this problem of the subsidy coming from low return per user is not a lot.
Yeah,
Doug.
And that's exactly the problem. This rule was aimed at Comcast and those folks because they have the $100 customers. And so, they just go, look, charge those guys $3 more. You raise your rates every year anyhow. That pays for these lower guys. And you have the kind of network where to hook up a new guy, all you got to do is put in a coax drop. It's not real expensive to add a new home on. And so that's just a different model than what Robert and Travis have for a million reasons. You don't have those giant pile of $100 customers. So one size fits all. These laws never work. It would have to go back to what Sascha described as rate regulation, which we're never going to get back to. You have to actually make people come in and show you their books and set their rates according to what their needs are. And I can't imagine we're ever going to get back to that. So
Robert's got a quick comment, then we'll go to Kim.
Yeah, just for point of comparison. So in New York State, in all of our markets, especially the rural ones, we're $49.95 for gigabit, and it includes whole home Wi-Fi. So, and there's no setup, no install. You just call us up, no credit check, and we set you up. Really simple.
I mean, for anyone who's not paying attention, that is among the lowest that I've heard of in urban areas. We certainly know of a few that are cheaper, so don't flood the comments with them. But that's 99% of the population is spending much more than that.
And they would be forcing they would be forcing Robert to give the $15 rate. He would have to raise those other folks to $70 or something. He could survive, but they're going to force him to be a very different company. Yeah. So
Kim.
I was going to say, well, thanks, Robert. I need to move to New York if you're not checking my credit. But anyway, I think that this just proves one, that I think it was a smart move for AT&T to do to set a precedent
What did AT&T do? We haven't talked about it yet.
Oh, that they pulled out of their wireless program in New York because of this law that New York set, right? And I think that was huge because I think it sets a precedent that we can't just regulate this problem across the country. And I'm doubtful that you're going to see any of these other programs go into any other states because of this.
Well, I'm really curious, just before we go to Travis, some of the numbers. I mean, I think T-Mobile claims more than 6 million passings. Presumably all of those would be eligible for this rate. I haven't seen them react. I got to think it's a significant issue for them. AT&T pulled out. AT&T was available in roughly 2% of the state. I'm vaguely thinking, although this could be a Karen moment for me where I'm just totally wrong. I thought they had like tens of thousands, like maybe 40,000 subscribers on that wireless service. So by AT&T standards, they're pulling out. It's probably more a play to try to threaten other states and scare them as opposed to them truly reacting to this. But one thing I'll say is that what I'm interested in with T-Mobile is we know they can't serve everyone in a given area, right? They have the right to just tell people they're not going to serve them. Under this law, it starts to mess with some of the wireless companies, particularly the mobile wireless companies that make grandiose claims but cannot actually serve many homes simultaneously. But Travis, let's see what your thoughts are.
So a couple thoughts. I think New York picked the wrong number. Really, financial viability to offer a low-income product is really at about a 50,000 subscriber number, not a 20,000 subscriber number. Secondarily, I wouldn't continue to build in New York, and I look forward to them passing the Affordable Orange Juice Act. As long as they're going to price regulate things, we should just go down the list of everything that we feel is just too expensive for people. And you know what? Maybe Affordable Cigarette Act. How about Affordable Beer Act? Let's just start doing them all, because I'm not sure why people think broadband, which is one of the most expensive propositions to deploy in a high quality way, somehow we can magically afford to give it away for below cost.
Well, Travis, I think the reason that people, I've heard that before, I don't think it's the strongest argument that you could make, just because I think internet access is such a role to play in education and other things. It's an essential service in the way that the other things you named are not. What I'm curious about is I feel like you've already said that you are willing to do this program voluntarily, and I feel like you're having a super negative reaction at being told that you would have to do it. And I can appreciate why, but I wonder if you just want to talk about that for a second.
Because I think at 20,000 users, ISPs that are that or below are really financially struggling. So now you put this handcuff on them. I think it's terrible.
I actually think the number should be 100,000. I mean, I think that the real separation, there's real separation, and I think that I do think 20,000 is too low. I think other states should do it. We can talk more about that. I think there's disagreement on that, but I do think you're right that the number should be much higher to have that separation. But go ahead,
that
Travis.
to me is the fundamental problem in the thing. I mean, you're not going to spur any competition at all. And if you want to have affordable broadband, as far as I'm concerned, the ACP style was probably the best thing they ever had, which is subsidize the providers. Maybe we could take EBT. Maybe we could take some form of government assistance that would qualify for broadband to help ease the pain without putting all the financial burden on operators like Robert and myself.
But that's where I think Sascha's point is correct, in that was a fantastically expensive program by our standards. What, $4 or $5 billion a year ultimately, probably, when that program's truly running. And most of that money going to charter, I'm questioning if that's a great solution. But one of the things that I'll say about my reason for supporting this is that I think to have a better program, you need a threat against Comcast, AT&T, Charter, Spectrum, Verizon, and states that start to implement this will force the big providers to go to the federal government and say, we're going to prioritize a federal solution that will work, rather than just saying, hey, there's a few million people who have no internet access, millions of children that can't do their homework and have their futures are compromised, but it's not my problem, right? I mean, and I'll be fair, Comcast shareholders shouldn't be responsible for fixing that problem. But
isn't this a USF reform discussion? It's a USF reform discussion more than anything else.
I think the USF reform discussion happens differently if states pass rules like this. I think that's the dynamic. But let's go around again. Robert, have you had any additional thoughts?
Yeah. So you mentioned Comcast. Xfinity has had for years Internet Essentials, which is $14.95 for basically that plan. If you're in certain low-income groups or qualify for SNAP and a couple other programs, then you can automatically get Internet Essentials for $15.
Automatically is a little bit strong, but it is a program that has changed the lives of more than 1 million families. So
yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah, one thing there's one interesting thing about this is that Starlink said they didn't have to participate because they don't have 20,000 customers, which if they really have 1.4 million US customers, that's almost impossible to believe. It also means that they are not in a position to take any USF or to take any BEAD in a state, because it would put them over that magic number. So I mean, are ISPs below 20,000, like those big companies, just going to say, I'm not going to work in New York anymore? First of all, they're probably lying about the 20,000, but even if they're not, they can't grow. So
that's a fair question, Doug. How do we know how many customers each of these guys has? Is it the honesty?
Well, they supposedly report it to the FCC every year, but
But there's no
They can-
QC on that at all.
I think that one
No.
other thing you could do to do this, and we'd recommend if I was designing this program for a state, I might actually say, rather than saying the number of subscribers, I might say the number of passings. And so if you claim 500,000 passings, then you are eligible. One of the things I think is interesting about that is it provides a counter. First of all, it's a public number. And second of all, it provides a counter incentive or an incentive against some of these claims from some companies where they're like, we pass everyone. And like, okay, well, fine. Then you have the resources to do this.
But
Sascha?
satellite does pass everybody.
No, and satellite, I think, is an interesting question. I have to give that more thought. Sascha?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, a lot of this comes down to how you view the problem, right? So, as Robert
Right.
pointed out, if the program is basically targeting your existing user base and you're losing higher ARPU, higher paying customers to lower paying customers, i.e., your existing customer base is ending up getting a lower cost service, then you're definitely in trouble if you're a small ISP. If you're onboarding new customers, well, that may be sort of the long tail that actually bolsters, because it's a marginal cost in a lot of ways if you're infilling your existing footprint. And long story short, though, regardless of the math, this is a very poor kludge for meaningful competition policy, which would also drive down the price, which is to say, we knew this within telecommunications and et cetera. We had open access. We had common carriage. We did this because we understood that that drove down the price. Having gutted all of that with the Brand X Supreme Court decision of 2005, we are now left with this triage that we are attempting to institute on the current telecommunication system, addressing everything except the core problem that we already know about.
Yeah, we have an incoherent telecom policy at the federal level for what has become an essential service, and that is, I think, the chief thing behind all of this. We're gonna have to wrap this pretty soon, so points that we haven't raised yet, just someone can jump in.
One thing is when you report to the, when you ask for the exemption in New York State, you have to give them a copy of your latest BDC filing, which does include subscribers in the state.
And, I think there was a question here I wanted to get to. Juan asked, that's my answer. Juan asked about the ability to have devices and things like that to make sure customers can take advantage of it. This gets to what we didn't dig into too much in the beginning, which is the NTIA is sitting on about $1 billion of grants for what we call digital equity, which is for devices and training for these kinds of families. And we are watching intently to see if the Trump administration sends them out or cancels the program in some way or another. So that's something that we hope we'll have a better sense of in a few weeks. Doug?
No more. I think we've hit it pretty well. So, yep.
Okay. The last thing I do want to touch on, and Robert, I'd love to have you here. I think we're going to spend more time on this, but in just a couple minutes, some people are saying BEAD should really focus less on fiber. There's the ITIF, which we've talked about before, which was released these really poorly researched reports on municipal broadband, which I don't say because I disagree with them. I say because they just get a lot of things wrong, factually, not with analysis, although we could argue about that. They've said that we should set the threshold for fiber at $1,200 per home. Doug,
$1,500 to be fair. To be fair, I think it was.
I saw $1,200 in the article that I read. Doug, can you tell me how many homes we would build in these of the BEAD locations at $1,200 of subsidy per home? Because I think I know the number.
Yeah. Well, it's obviously zero. The number they came up with, obviously, someone paid them to publish that. So that's what that organization does for a living.
It's remarkable. It's find me a single location that requires less than $1,200 of subsidy, or $1,500. Doesn't matter. Both those numbers are so low. It's just discrediting. I remember when in 2015 there was still some of these coin-operated think tanks were talking about how WiMAX was going to make fiber obsolete. These people, you can't take them seriously, but then we have to because they have all the money of the world to spread these ridiculous ideas. Any thoughts?
You can't even build the Toronto radio systems for that much money. They cost more than that.
I mean,
go ahead.
This is sad.
That was
This
just
is
a rant. That was just Chris's rant. We're at 2 today. I just wanted to just.
All right, Sascha.
Yeah, I was going to say, the function. We're not the target audience, right? The function of these kinds of studies is to the FCC, to the Hill, et cetera, who then take like reality and physics and then this thing, and then are like, how do we balance the two? Right? So somebody says, hey, look, the minimal cost that you can build out to is like a subsidy of like 5 to 10 grand for a lot of these high cost areas at least. And then they say 1,200. So we're going to split them. We're going to like average these two things. You don't get good policy that way. You get crap policy. But that's the function, which is to say the function of this is to create government interventions that continue to maintain these monopoly powers. And they are unfortunately very effective because policymakers are never held to account for the craptacular policies and regulations that they keep passing.
Okay, I get you, Sascha, that like some of this is just noodling up at the Hill, right? But how do we know, or how do the lawmakers really know what they should be deciding on, right? Because it's hard. Because what information is correct? Because everybody has an opinion and has a point of view. So what information should they take to make the most informed decision? We can always say our source, but supposedly
it's very easy.
They could watch this show. I mean, it's
quick response.
They can look and see who lied to them previously, right? We prognosticate, right? And it's like, if we get it right consistently and the other side consistently is wrong, then over time you build up a record, right? That goes to the integrity of the reliability of your source. So what bothers me about DC is not the lobbyists themselves, but rather this conceit whereby politicians, regulators pretend like, both sides have their point of view. I'm like, but one's fact-based and the other's a liar. And
or we could say mostly fact-based and the other is mostly, because like these things are rarely 100-0, but yes. Travis, any thoughts as we're speeding toward a close?
No, I have no idea how they figure this stuff out. I think it's who's ever getting paid. So follow the money, baby.
For sure.
I have one final thought. I loved craptacular. Was that the word?
So if I could reform the BEAD program, you said, hey, Robert, how would you fix it?
Yeah, tell us.
Get rid of BABA, get rid of prevailing wage, and just have a reverse auction. Whoever's going to build that area for the lowest subsidy. I was going to build that area anyway. If I get $500 or $1,000 to help build it, great. It doesn't have to necessarily pay for it.
Because RDOF went so well, Robert, for a lot of people.
Hey, we're building in Virginia with RDOF. It works.
Robert,
Robert,
I think you're going to get your wish on some of that. I think that we will see Buy America strip back or something. I think that's what the general census is. I think we're going to see the prevailing wage. I continue to be someone who supports the idea that government money should be spent on good wage jobs, but the federal government has never developed a good way of actually measuring what those are. And so it's actually created as many problems as it's solved, arguably more. And so it's deeply frustrating that the federal government hasn't taken it seriously enough to actually do it well. The other comment I want to make was Tom Randstrom had mentioned the Office of Technology. Back before many of us were doing any of this stuff seriously, except for Doug, there was the Office of Technology Assessment. Congress actually had independent experts to the extent that anyone could be independent. They had their points of view. It was perceived by a number of people that they were too anti-market and too anti the big companies that lobbied about a lot. And so that entire structure was removed. But Congress used to have somewhat independent advice that it could draw upon in making these sorts of decisions. I don't know how one does that, but it is something that we've done in the past.
Yeah.
I would say that they usually know the real truth. So the fact is they know who is telling the truth about most of these topics. So they are using these other feints and fake things to make other decisions. So I don't think the facts are hidden on this kind of stuff. So.
Can I just also add, I think Robert is crazy, but I totally agree with him. They should do reverse auctions, but only for people that haven't defaulted on the last reverse auction, right? Like, I mean, can we agree? Like, if you're a serial defaulter on like CAF 2, RDOF, then maybe you shouldn't be eligible for the next one.
Or if you're currently in bankruptcy,
Yes.
Yeah.
there
I
could be
agree with
there could be a few things approaching guardrails. We don't even need full guardrails. Just, you know, things that are like guardrails, like tape along the side of the road to get your attention but won't stop your vehicle. You know, like that would be a nice step in the right direction. All right. It's been a fun show. It's been really lively. I blame Ruben. I think we'll try to get back to a more of a boring, less interesting show next time, the kind that I like to run. But I want to thank Robert. Robert, thank you for joining us, and
Thanks for having me.
and I really appreciate your comments. I appreciate all the work you're doing to spread that $50 a month service. So you can be my new best friend. After Travis gets me an awesome connection, then I'll start just like trying to hang out with you all the time until I can get you over here.
I'm going to be replaced. Robert,
I believe he just said that. I think your history, Travis.
I mean, actually, my dream is that we take your recreational vehicle, Travis, and pick up Robert and spend a few days touring steak sandwich shops in southeast Pennsylvania, the Philadelphia area.
Travis, you were just voted off the island.
I
Sorry.
know.
Yeah,
Nothing
yeah.
I would enjoy more than rolling around the country with Mr. Mitchell, listening.
Well, he doesn't want to roll around with you. He wants your RV.
I bet we make it to Wisconsin before you toss me out.
Exactly. You know, and I got to hear all about the Wilson administration for 40 years.
Or Woody. Woody is like we
Woody
like
Wilson.
Thank you, Sascha. Appreciate you coming on and taking me cutting you off friendly.
Of course, always. We have a long-standing tradition of that.
Also looking forward to for others who are interested, I think we're going to try and start some Borderlands 4 fun stuff when that comes out. So we will talk more about that offline perhaps, and then invite people. But Doug, Kim, and Travis, thank you all so much for joining me once again and making my Friday amazing.
Thank you, Mr. Mitchell. Well done, and nice hair. Well done.
All right, we'll probably be back in about 2 weeks, and we're looking forward to having another fun episode of Connect This.